Alice and Jack Harper seem to lead an idyllic life. Alice, a graceful and thoughtful woman, has a warm smile that contrasts with her occasional pensive gaze. She works as a freelance graphic designer, enjoying the flexibility that allows her to focus on her passions. Jack, her husband, is a dedicated and somewhat reserved professional, known for his punctuality and commitment to his work. He holds a position at a company that requires him to keep the specifics of his job confidential, which he finds intriguing and satisfying. Their relationship is marked by mutual respect and affection. They've been married for 5 years, and their bond is evident in their shared laughter and the easy way they navigate life's challenges together. Their home, a cozy and modern house in a secluded, upscale neighborhood, reflects their taste and stability. It's a sanctuary for them, a place where they can escape from the hustle and bustle of the outside world. The community where Alice and Jack live is an exclusive, gated neighborhood known for its tranquility and picturesque scenery. The houses are well spaced, surrounded by lush greenery and manicured lawns, giving it an almost utopian feel. The residents are a mix of professionals and retirees, each with their own quirks and personalities. Despite the community's outward appearance of perfection, there's an underlying sense of insularity and conformity. Alice has been trying to integrate into this community by attending social events and engaging with her neighbors. She finds the people friendly but notices that their interactions are often surface level, with a tendency to avoid discussing personal matters. Conversations are polite but seem to skim the surface, leaving Alice with a sense that something is being withheld. The neighborhood's peculiar charm is enhanced by its isolation. It's positioned away from the city, creating a bubble where the outside world feels distant. Alice and Jack enjoy the peace and quiet, but Alice begins to sense that the serene environment might also be hiding something more unsettling. As Alice gets to know her neighbors, she starts to notice subtle oddities in their behavior. Despite the community's emphasis on harmony, there are occasional whispers and sidelong glances that pique her curiosity. Her sense of unease grows as she starts to experience strange occurrences in their home, which she initially tries to brush off as stress or overactive imagination. Their life together seems perfect, yet beneath the surface, Alice is beginning to feel the first stirrings of doubt and curiosity about the true nature of their surroundings and the secrets that might be lurking within their seemingly perfect world. Jack Harper's job is a well-guarded secret. He works for a company that operates in a heavily secured, high-tech facility located on the outskirts of their secluded community. The company is known for its cutting-edge technology and classified projects, but specifics are shrouded in mystery. Jack's role is particularly enigmatic. He is frequently away from home on business trips and has strict confidentiality agreements that prevent him from discussing any details of his work. His attire, always professional and impeccable, adds to the air of secrecy. He often carries a briefcase with advanced security features and wears an ID badge that grants him access to restricted areas. Despite his outward calm and normalcy, there are hints of stress in his demeanor, especially after particularly long or intense periods at work. Jack is evasive when Alice inquires about his day, offering only vague responses and reassurances that he's working on important but routine projects. The nature of Jack's work is so classified that even Alice, who is close to him, is kept in the dark. He is accustomed to the confidentiality requirements and seems genuinely content with his job, even if it means he must maintain a certain distance from his personal life. He speaks of his work with a guarded pride, emphasizing its importance without delving into specifics. Alice's curiosity about Jack's work grows as she observes his behavior and the frequent absences. Initially, she respected his privacy, understanding the need for discretion in his role. However, as time passes, her intrigue intensifies. She notices small details, a hidden compartment in his briefcase, coded messages on his phone, and the occasional mention of non-disclosure agreements, that fuel her desire to uncover the truth. Alice begins to feel a growing sense of isolation from Jack's secret world. Their conversations about his work are consistently vague, and he dismisses her questions with a practiced ease. This secrecy contrasts sharply with their otherwise open and communicative relationship, causing Alice to question what could be so crucial that it must remain hidden. Her curiosity leads her to conduct her own investigations. She starts by exploring their home for clues, noting anything that might hint at the nature of Jack's job. She pays close attention to any oddities in their daily routine or items Jack might bring home. Alice also becomes increasingly observant of the few interactions Jack has with his colleagues or the occasional cryptic phone call he takes in private. The more Alice uncovers, the more her curiosity transforms into a persistent obsession. Her attempts to respect Jack's boundaries begin to wane as she delves deeper into the mystery. The lines between her desire for understanding and the respect for her husband's privacy blur, driving her to consider more intrusive methods of discovery. Alice's growing frustration with the lack of transparency in their relationship adds a new layer of tension to their marriage, setting the stage for the unraveling of deeper secrets. After moving into the secluded community, Alice is eager to establish a sense of belonging. The neighborhood, with its pristine lawns, uniform houses, and impeccably polite residents, appears inviting on the surface. To integrate, Alice attends social gatherings, joins local clubs, and makes an effort to engage with her neighbors. She takes part in the monthly book club, goes for morning jogs around the well-maintained trails, and even volunteers to help organize the annual community picnic. Despite her efforts, Alice finds it challenging to form meaningful connections. The neighbors are friendly but distant, their conversations limited to pleasantries and superficial topics. Alice often feels like an outsider looking in, unable to penetrate the polite facade that everyone maintains. She notices that while everyone is welcoming, there's a lack of genuine warmth or curiosity about her life. Conversations often steer away from personal matters, and any attempts by Alice to dig deeper are met with subtle deflections. During gatherings, Alice senses an unspoken code of conduct, a rigid social structure that everyone seems to adhere to without question. The community is close-knit, but not in the way she expected. There's a pervasive sense of uniformity, as if the residents are playing roles in a well-rehearsed play. This creates an unsettling atmosphere, making Alice wonder if the neighborhood's harmony is more about conformity than genuine connection. As Alice spends more time in the community, she begins to notice strange and unsettling behaviors among her neighbors. At first, these observations seem minor, odd habits, peculiar routines, but as they accumulate, they start to form a pattern that Alice can't ignore. One of her first observations is that the residents maintain a strict schedule. Every day at precisely 6 p.m., curtains are drawn in every house, and the streets become eerily quiet. Alice finds it odd that there's never any variation in this routine. Even more peculiar is how the neighbors react when she mentions it. They either laugh it off as a quaint tradition or simply change the subject. Alice also notices that the conversations she has with her neighbors often feel scripted. The same phrases and expressions are repeated, as if everyone is reading from the same manual. The residents seem to avoid discussing certain topics, especially anything related to Jack's workplace or the nature of the community itself. When Alice once casually mentioned her husband's secretive job, the neighbor she was speaking to froze for a moment, then quickly smiled and changed the subject to the weather. There are also unexplained events that catch Alice's attention. She overhears whispered conversations in hushed tones that abruptly stop when she approaches. She witnesses strange behavior, like a neighbor watering the lawn in the middle of the night or another walking in circles around their house as if in a trance. Once, while jogging, Alice saw a group of neighbors standing in a circle in the park, seemingly engaged in some sort of silent, synchronized activity. When they noticed her presence, they dispersed without a word, leaving Alice with an unsettling feeling. As these oddities pile up, Alice's initial discomfort turns into a gnawing sense of unease. The perfect exterior of the community starts to crack, revealing a deeper, more disturbing layer beneath. Alice begins to suspect that the residents are hiding something significant, something that goes beyond the usual quirks of small-town life. Her sense of isolation grows as she realizes that she may be the only one questioning the true nature of the community and its inhabitants. As Alice settles into her new home, strange and unsettling occurrences begin to disrupt the tranquility she once felt. It starts with small, almost imperceptible things, a misplaced object, a sudden chill in the air, or a faint whisper that seems to come from nowhere. At first, Alice brushes them off as mere coincidences, but as these incidents become more frequent and more bizarre, she can no longer ignore them. One evening, while reading in the living room, Alice hears faint footsteps upstairs. Assuming it's Jack, she calls out to him, but there's no response. When she goes to investigate, she finds the upstairs hallway empty, the doors closed, and an eerie silence filling the space. The sound of footsteps continues even after she's certain she's alone, moving from one room to another, always just out of sight. Another time, Alice notices that the clocks in the house start behaving oddly. They stop at the exact same time every night, 3:15 a.m., regardless of whether they're digital or analog. She resets them, but the next night, the same thing happens. She wakes up at 3:15 a.m., feeling a heavy presence in the room, as if someone is watching her. The air feels thick and cold, and she can see her breath misting in the dark, even though it's the middle of summer. In the kitchen, cupboards open and close on their own, and utensils fall from countertops without any apparent cause. Lights flicker, casting long, ominous shadows that seem to move independently of the objects casting them. Alice begins to hear whispering voices, indistinct but persistent, as if someone, or something, is trying to communicate with her. The voices are always just on the edge of her hearing, too faint to understand but unmistakably real. One of the most disturbing incidents occurs when Alice is alone in the house. She walks into the bathroom and finds the mirror fogged up, as though someone had just taken a hot shower. Written in the condensation are the words, "Help me." Panicked, she wipes the mirror clean, only to find the words reappearing moments later. This event leaves Alice shaken and terrified, but when she tells Jack, he dismisses it as a bad dream or a prank. Despite the increasing frequency of these paranormal events, Alice tries to rationalize what she's experiencing. She tells herself that moving to a new home in an unfamiliar community is bound to be stressful, and that stress can play tricks on the mind. She starts to question her own sanity, wondering if she's simply overworked or imagining things in response to the isolation she feels. Alice begins to look for logical explanations for each occurrence. She blames the footsteps on the house settling, attributing the sounds to old pipes or creaky floorboards. The clocks, she reasons, might have faulty batteries or be affected by some strange electrical interference. The chill she feels at night could be a draft from an improperly sealed window, and the whispers might be the wind moving through the trees outside. She even considers the possibility that someone in the neighborhood is playing an elaborate prank on her, though she struggles to identify any plausible motive. The idea of being targeted unnerves her, but it's easier to accept than the alternative, that something supernatural is happening in her home. To reassure herself, Alice takes practical steps. She replaces the batteries in the clocks, checks the windows for drafts, and even installs motion sensor lights in the hallways. She starts keeping a journal of the events, hoping that by documenting them, she can find a pattern or a rational explanation. Alice also tries to immerse herself in her work, focusing on her graphic design projects to distract herself from the strange happenings. She tells herself that everything has a logical explanation, and that she just needs to stay calm and not let her imagination get the best of her. However, as the occurrences continue and grow more intense, Alice finds it harder to maintain her skepticism. The rational explanations she clings to begin to crumble under the weight of the inexplicable, and she starts to fear that something much darker and more dangerous is at play in her home. Her once perfect life is slowly unraveling, and the boundaries between reality and the supernatural are blurring in ways she can no longer deny. Determined to integrate more fully into the community and perhaps distract herself from the strange occurrences at home, Alice begins attending more social gatherings. The neighborhood is known for its frequent events, dinner parties, barbecues, and themed get-togethers that bring everyone together. These occasions are meticulously planned, with every detail seemingly perfected to create an atmosphere of warmth and camaraderie. Alice initially finds these gatherings enjoyable. The residents are always welcoming, offering her drinks, engaging her in light conversation, and making her feel included. The events are lively, with laughter echoing through the spacious homes and beautifully maintained gardens. However, beneath the surface, Alice can't shake the feeling that something is off. As she moves from one conversation to another, she notices a peculiar uniformity in the topics discussed. The neighbors speak in vague terms about their work, their pasts, and even their hobbies, with little personal detail ever revealed. There's an almost scripted quality to the interactions, as if everyone is reciting lines from a play. The more Alice observes, the more she senses that these gatherings are less about genuine connection and more about maintaining appearances. At a dinner party hosted by the Andersons, one of the community's most prominent couples, Alice is struck by the unnaturally synchronized behavior of the guests. Everyone seems to know exactly when to laugh, when to change the subject, and when to politely excuse themselves from a conversation. The host and hostess glide through the evening with practiced ease, subtly guiding the evening's flow, ensuring that no conversation ever becomes too personal or controversial. Despite the outward friendliness, Alice begins to feel increasingly isolated. The conversations are hollow, the smiles too perfect, and the laughter too controlled. She realizes that while the residents are outwardly friendly, there is an invisible barrier that prevents any real intimacy. It's as if they are all keeping a collective secret, one that Alice is not yet privy to. As Alice continues to attend these gatherings, she starts paying closer attention to the stories her neighbors tell. She notices inconsistencies in their accounts, subtle contradictions that most people would overlook. For example, during a casual conversation, Mrs. Thompson mentions that her son attends a prestigious private school in the city. But when Alice later brings it up with Mr. Thompson, he casually mentions that they homeschool their children. These conflicting stories leave Alice puzzled. Similarly, the Johnsons, who always present themselves as a happy couple deeply in love, let slip contradictory details about their life before moving to the community. Mr. Johnson once mentioned they had lived in Europe for several years, while Mrs. Johnson told Alice they had never left the country. When Alice asks innocently about these discrepancies, she is met with nervous laughter or a quick change of subject, further deepening her suspicion that something is amiss. Alice also notices that the residents have an uncanny ability to remember minute details about each other, but when it comes to their own pasts, their recollections are oddly vague. They speak about their lives before moving to the community in broad strokes, with very little specificity. It's as if their pasts are carefully constructed narratives, meant to keep anyone from asking too many questions. During one particularly strange encounter, Alice overhears a conversation between two neighbors that leaves her feeling uneasy. They are discussing an old friend who apparently moved away, but their tones are hushed and their expressions tense. When Alice asks about this friend, the neighbors quickly dismiss the topic, saying she's no longer relevant and that it's best not to dwell on the past. These inconsistencies and evasions lead Alice to suspect that the neighbors are hiding something significant, perhaps even something sinister. The more she tries to piece together the truth, the more she realizes that the friendly facade the community projects is just that, a facade. The residents are not what they seem, and their stories don't quite add up. As Alice continues to uncover these discrepancies, her sense of unease grows. She feels trapped in a web of deceit, where everyone is playing a role, and the true nature of the community remains hidden just beneath the surface. The perfect life she thought she had is slowly unraveling, and she is left wondering what dark secrets are lurking in the shadows of this seemingly idyllic neighborhood. As the strange occurrences in her home continue, Alice's curiosity drives her to explore every nook and cranny of the house, hoping to find some explanation for the unsettling events. One day, while cleaning in the basement, she notices something odd, a faint outline on one of the walls that she hadn't seen before. The outline is subtle, almost imperceptible, but as she runs her fingers along the wall, she feels a slight draft, indicating there might be something hidden behind it. Intrigued, Alice pushes against the wall, and to her surprise, it swings open to reveal a narrow, dimly lit passageway. The hidden door is expertly concealed, blending seamlessly with the surrounding walls. The discovery sends a shiver down her spine, but her curiosity overpowers her fear. She wonders why such a passage would exist and what it could possibly lead to. As Alice examines the rest of the house with renewed scrutiny, she begins to notice other anomalies, small details that she had previously overlooked. A slight gap between the bookshelves in the study suggests they might be more than just storage. A section of the floor in the attic creaks differently underfoot, hinting at a hidden compartment below. The more she looks, the more she finds, leading her to suspect that the house holds many secrets. With each discovery, Alice feels both excited and apprehensive. The idea that her home might contain secret rooms or hidden compartments is both thrilling and terrifying. She realizes that these hidden areas were deliberately designed to remain concealed, raising more questions about the house's history and Jack's possible knowledge of them. Driven by an overwhelming need to know the truth, Alice decides to explore the hidden passage in the basement first. Armed with a flashlight and a growing sense of determination, she steps into the narrow corridor. The air is cold and musty, filled with the scent of dust and decay, and the walls are lined with exposed pipes and wires, giving the space an unfinished, almost industrial feel. As she ventures deeper, the passage twists and turns, leading her further away from the familiar parts of the house. The further she goes, the more disoriented she becomes, as if the passage was designed to confuse and dissuade anyone from exploring it. Despite this, Alice presses on, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. The passage eventually opens into a small, windowless room, filled with old, forgotten items, boxes of documents, outdated equipment, and strange, unmarked containers. The room feels like a storage space for things that were meant to be hidden away and forgotten. As she sifts through the contents, Alice finds old photographs, documents with redacted text, and items that seem out of place, like an old-fashioned radio and a set of keys that don't match any doors she knows of. The most disturbing discovery is a series of journals filled with notes and drawings that Alice can't immediately decipher. The handwriting is Jack's, but the content is cryptic, filled with strange symbols, references to experiments, and mentions of subjects that Alice has never heard of. The journals seem to detail some kind of research or project that Jack has been involved in, and the implications are chilling. Feeling overwhelmed, Alice takes a few of the journals and quickly makes her way back to the main part of the house. As she exits the hidden passage, she feels as though she's crossed a threshold, stepping into a new, darker reality where nothing is as it seems. The secrets she's uncovered raise more questions than answers, and she begins to realize that her husband may be involved in something far more sinister than she ever imagined. Her exploration doesn't stop there. Over the next few days, Alice carefully investigates the other anomalies she's found in the house. She discovers another hidden door behind the bookshelf in the study, leading to a concealed room filled with more mysterious equipment and files. The attic's hidden compartment reveals a dusty, leather-bound book filled with esoteric symbols and a language she can't understand. As Alice uncovers more of the house's hidden spaces, she begins to piece together a disturbing picture of Jack's work and its connection to the strange events in their home. The secrets she's uncovering are far more dangerous than she ever anticipated, and she realizes that she's only just begun to scratch the surface of the mysteries that surround her life. The house, once a symbol of their perfect life, has now become a labyrinth of secrets, pulling her deeper into a web of intrigue and fear. After discovering the hidden areas in her home, Alice's life takes an even darker turn as the paranormal occurrences become more intense and impossible to ignore. The once subtle and sporadic disturbances now escalate into terrifying, undeniable events that plague her daily life. It starts with the mirrors. Each one in the house begins to show Alice unsettling images. She sees figures moving behind her reflection, shadows that shouldn't be there, and sometimes, her own reflection appears distorted, as if something is trying to break through the glass. One night, she wakes up to find all the mirrors in the house covered with a thick layer of fog, despite the warm weather. As she wipes them down, she notices handprints that don't match her own, smudged into the glass, as if someone, or something, has been trying to reach out to her. The whispers that once seemed faint and distant now grow louder, clearer. They call her name, taunting her, urging her to uncover more of the house's secrets. The voices no longer limit themselves to the night, they invade her waking hours, following her from room to room. At times, they sound desperate, pleading with her to help, while at other moments, they are menacing, filled with anger and resentment. Objects around the house begin to move on their own, chairs scrape across the floor, doors slam shut with no apparent cause, and lights flicker ominously. Alice's attempts to explain these phenomena away as mere coincidences become increasingly futile. One particularly horrifying night, she hears the sound of children laughing in the middle of the night. When she rushes to the source of the sound, she finds the basement door wide open, a cold draft flowing out as if inviting her in. She slams the door shut, her heart racing, but the laughter continues, growing more distorted and echoing through the walls. Sleep becomes elusive as Alice begins to experience vivid, terrifying nightmares. She dreams of being trapped in the hidden passages of the house, chased by shadowy figures that whisper her name and reach out with cold, grasping hands. In these dreams, the house feels alive, pulsing with a malevolent energy that feeds off her fear. Each time she wakes, she finds herself disoriented, drenched in sweat, with the lingering feeling that something from her nightmares has followed her into the waking world. As the paranormal experiences intensify, Alice's initial curiosity transforms into overwhelming fear. The once comforting environment of her home now feels hostile, as if the house itself is turning against her. Her nerves are constantly on edge, and the tension begins to take a toll on her mental and physical health. She finds herself jumping at the slightest sound, unable to shake the feeling of being watched. Alice's frustration also grows as she realizes that she is dealing with something far beyond her understanding. Her attempts to confront Jack about the strange occurrences only lead to more evasions and vague reassurances. He insists that she's imagining things, or that stress is causing her to see and hear things that aren't there. His dismissive attitude only adds to her isolation, making her feel as though she's facing this nightmare alone. Determined to find answers, Alice tries to reach out to the neighbors, hoping to uncover if anyone else has experienced similar phenomena. However, her efforts are met with the same polite but firm resistance she has come to expect from them. They avoid her questions, changing the subject or offering hollow reassurances that everything is fine. This only deepens her suspicion that the entire community is involved in whatever is happening to her. Desperation drives Alice to search for help elsewhere. She spends hours online, researching hauntings, paranormal activity, and the occult, hoping to find some clue that could explain what's happening. The more she reads, the more she realizes that the events in her home are not just random, they are part of something much darker and more dangerous. Her fear turns into paranoia as she begins to suspect that the house, the community, and even Jack are all conspiring against her. She starts to question her own sanity, wondering if the constant fear and stress are warping her perception of reality. But even in her most doubtful moments, the undeniable reality of what she's experiencing keeps her grounded in the terrifying truth: something is very wrong, and she is at the center of it. Alice's once perfect life is unraveling rapidly. She feels trapped in a living nightmare, with no clear way out. The cracks in the surface of her seemingly idyllic existence have widened into deep chasms, threatening to swallow her whole. The fear that once lurked in the shadows now dominates her every waking moment, and she realizes that the only way to survive is to uncover the truth, no matter how horrifying it may be. As the paranormal experiences at home become unbearable, Alice's need for answers intensifies, leading her to turn her attention to Jack's secretive workplace. The nature of his job has always been a mystery to her, and with the mounting strangeness around her, she begins to suspect that his work may be connected to the unsettling events at home. Determined to uncover the truth, Alice decides to investigate the one place that Jack has explicitly warned her to avoid. Her first step is to gather information about the facility. Alice starts by searching through any documents or items Jack might have left behind in the house. She finds vague references to the workplace, but nothing concrete: no address, no official name, just a series of coded notes and cryptic symbols similar to the ones she found in the hidden journals. These clues suggest that whatever Jack is involved in, it's not a typical job. Frustrated by the lack of information, Alice decides to follow Jack to work. One morning, she waits until Jack leaves the house, then discreetly follows him in her car. The drive takes her out of the secluded community and into an even more isolated area, surrounded by dense woods and barren fields. Eventually, Jack's car pulls into a heavily guarded facility, surrounded by high fences topped with barbed wire. Security cameras and armed guards patrol the perimeter, making it clear that this is no ordinary workplace. Alice parks a safe distance away and observes the facility from her car. The building is imposing, with no signs or identifying marks, giving it an almost ominous presence. Workers in nondescript uniforms move in and out of the building, their faces obscured by caps and sunglasses, adding to the sense of secrecy. The more Alice watches, the more certain she becomes that whatever is happening here is deeply connected to the horrors she's experiencing at home. Desperate for more information, Alice decides to sneak closer to the facility. She waits until nightfall, when the area is less active, and carefully approaches the fence. She manages to find a spot where she can see inside, but the view only raises more questions. She spots trucks leaving the facility at odd hours, and occasionally hears strange, unidentifiable sounds emanating from within the building. The atmosphere is oppressive, filled with a sense of dread that mirrors what she feels in her own home. Before she can gather more information, a spotlight suddenly sweeps over her hiding place, forcing her to retreat quickly. She narrowly avoids being spotted by the guards, but the close call leaves her shaken. Alice realizes that her investigation has only scratched the surface of whatever dark secret Jack is involved in, and that further probing could be extremely dangerous. As Alice delves deeper into her investigation, she begins to encounter strange individuals who seem connected to both the facility and the unsettling events at home. These encounters are brief but leave a lasting impact, each one further deepening her sense of unease. The first encounter occurs at a local grocery store. Alice notices a man who seems out of place, his appearance too polished, too deliberate. He's dressed in a suit, despite the casual setting, and his gaze seems to linger on her for too long. When Alice tries to avoid him, he suddenly appears in the next aisle, pretending to browse but clearly keeping an eye on her. The man eventually approaches her, making small talk that feels off. His questions are too personal, his tone too probing. When Alice mentions Jack's name, the man's expression changes subtly, a flicker of recognition passing over his face before he abruptly ends the conversation and walks away. The next encounter is even more disturbing. While walking in the neighborhood one evening, Alice notices a woman she hasn't seen before. The woman is standing on the edge of the woods that border the community, her figure barely visible in the twilight. As Alice approaches, the woman turns and begins walking towards her with an unnerving calmness. When they meet, the woman speaks in a low, almost robotic voice, warning Alice to stop asking questions and to leave things as they are. Her words are laced with veiled threats, and her eyes seem to bore into Alice's soul. Before Alice can respond, the woman turns and disappears into the woods, leaving Alice shaken and more determined than ever to uncover the truth. The most chilling encounter happens a few days later, when Alice receives an unexpected visitor at her home. A man claiming to be a representative from a local utility company arrives, saying he needs to inspect the house for a possible gas leak. But as he walks through the house, Alice notices that he's not looking at the gas lines, he's examining the rooms, lingering in the hidden spaces she's discovered, as if searching for something. When Alice questions him, the man's demeanor turns cold. He hands her a business card with nothing but a phone number and tells her to call if she has any concerns about the house. Then, without another word, he leaves. The card feels like a warning, and Alice suspects that the man was sent by whoever is behind the facility. These encounters leave Alice increasingly paranoid, her sense of safety eroded by the knowledge that she's being watched and monitored. She realizes that her investigation has put her in the crosshairs of powerful, mysterious forces. The more she pushes for answers, the closer she edges toward a dangerous truth that could shatter her life completely. As the mysteries surrounding Jack's workplace deepen and the strange encounters continue, Alice finds herself at a critical juncture, torn between trusting the man she loves and the gnawing suspicion that he is involved in something dark and dangerous. The once unshakable foundation of her marriage begins to crack as doubt seeps into her thoughts, clouding her judgment and making her question everything she knows about Jack. Alice's love for Jack is genuine. She cherishes the life they've built together and the moments of happiness they've shared. Yet, the secrets that Jack keeps, combined with the escalating paranormal events at home, make it impossible for her to ignore the growing sense that something is terribly wrong. Every time she tries to convince herself that she's overreacting, a new clue or strange occurrence pulls her back into a spiral of suspicion. Her mind becomes a battleground, with trust and doubt waging an exhausting war. In moments of calm, Alice remembers the Jack she fell in love with, his kindness, his sense of humor, and the way he always made her feel safe. These memories make it difficult for her to believe that he could be hiding something sinister. But then, the memories are tainted by recent events, the hidden rooms, the cryptic journals, and the unsettling behavior of the people around her. Each of these things erodes her confidence in Jack, planting seeds of fear that she can no longer ignore. Alice tries to rationalize her suspicions, reminding herself that everyone has secrets, and not all of them are dangerous. But the nature of Jack's secrecy, the way he deflects her questions and shuts her out, feels different, more deliberate, more guarded. This only fuels her paranoia, making her question whether she ever truly knew Jack at all. Her internal struggle begins to affect her physically and emotionally. She loses sleep, her appetite wanes, and she becomes increasingly withdrawn. The constant tension takes a toll on her mental health, leaving her feeling isolated and vulnerable. She finds herself trapped in a cycle of fear and uncertainty, unable to move forward but too frightened to confront Jack directly. The person she once trusted most now feels like a stranger, and the home they shared has become a place of fear and suspicion. The strain of Alice's internal struggle inevitably seeps into her relationship with Jack, creating a palpable tension that neither can ignore. The easy, comfortable rhythm of their life together is disrupted by unspoken doubts and half-answered questions. Conversations that once flowed freely are now stilted and awkward, filled with pauses that carry the weight of what remains unsaid. Alice finds herself scrutinizing Jack's every word and action, searching for clues that might confirm or dispel her suspicions. When Jack comes home late, she wonders where he's been and why he won't tell her more about his day. When he seems distracted or distant, she fears that he's hiding something even more terrible than she imagined. These thoughts consume her, making it difficult for her to maintain the facade of a normal, happy marriage. Jack, for his part, seems to sense the shift in Alice's demeanor. He notices her unease, the way she flinches at unexpected sounds or looks at him with a mixture of love and fear. He tries to reassure her, but his efforts are clumsy, only serving to deepen her suspicion. His own frustration begins to show. He grows more defensive when Alice questions him, more secretive about his work, and less patient with her growing anxiety. The tension between them reaches a boiling point during a seemingly mundane argument about dinner plans. What starts as a minor disagreement quickly escalates into a heated exchange, with both of them saying things they don't mean. Jack accuses Alice of being paranoid, while Alice retorts that he's hiding something from her. The argument leaves both of them hurt and confused, each retreating into their own thoughts, further widening the emotional gap between them. In the days that follow, the distance between them grows. Jack becomes more guarded, spending more time at work and less time at home. Alice, in turn, becomes more isolated, consumed by her fears and suspicions. The warmth and intimacy that once defined their relationship are replaced by a cold, silent tension that neither knows how to break. They move through the motions of their daily lives, but the connection between them feels fragile, as if it could shatter at any moment. Alice is left at a crossroads, unsure of how to proceed. On one hand, she wants to trust Jack, to believe that he's still the man she married and that their love can survive whatever secrets he's keeping. On the other hand, The mounting evidence of his deception and the dangers she's uncovered make it impossible for her to ignore the possibility that their relationship is built on lies. The tension in their relationship reaches a point where Alice knows she must make a choice: confront Jack and demand the truth, or continue to live in the shadow of her suspicions, risking the collapse of everything they've built together. The stakes have never been higher, and Alice realizes that whatever decision she makes will change the course of her life forever. As Alice's suspicions intensify and the tension between her and Jack grows unbearable, she becomes more determined to uncover the truth about the secluded community they live in. The strange behavior of the neighbors, the unexplained paranormal occurrences in her home, and the cryptic warnings she has received all point to a sinister reality lurking beneath the surface of her seemingly idyllic life. Alice begins by focusing on the residents of the community, whom she has always found unsettling in their overly polite and conformist behavior. She decides to dig deeper, starting with the subtle inconsistencies she has noticed in their stories. She starts discreetly asking questions during social gatherings, piecing together fragments of conversations and observing their reactions. The more she probes, the more she realizes that everyone in the community is hiding something. One day, Alice stumbles upon a locked filing cabinet in the community center while attending a meeting. She manages to unlock it using a set of keys she previously found in one of the hidden rooms in her home. Inside, she discovers files on every resident in the community, including detailed reports on their behavior, interactions, and even their private thoughts and actions. Shocked, Alice realizes that the community is under constant surveillance, with every move of its residents meticulously documented. The files also reveal that many of the residents have been involved in secret experiments and psychological conditioning, all orchestrated by an unknown entity that seems to control the entire community. Further investigation leads Alice to an abandoned building on the outskirts of the community. Here, she uncovers a room filled with strange equipment and documents detailing various experiments conducted on the residents. These experiments involve mind control, behavioral modification, and the manipulation of perception, all designed to create a population that is compliant and easily controlled. The documents also suggest that the paranormal occurrences in her home are not isolated incidents but are connected to the experiments being conducted in the community. Alice realizes that the entire community is part of a larger, more sinister experiment, and that she and Jack are both unwitting participants. As she reads through the documents, Alice learns that the community was specifically chosen for these experiments due to its isolated location and the ease with which its residents could be monitored and controlled. The more she uncovers, the more horrified she becomes, realizing that her life, her marriage, and everything she thought she knew have been manipulated by forces beyond her control. The hidden truths about the community are far darker than she ever imagined, and she begins to fear that she may never escape its grasp. As Alice delves deeper into the mysteries surrounding the community, she finally begins to unravel the truth about Jack's secretive job. The clues she has collected point her back to the facility she had once tried to investigate. Determined to get answers, Alice decides to confront Jack directly, hoping that the weight of what she knows will compel him to reveal the truth. After a particularly tense day, Alice waits for Jack to come home. She confronts him with the files she discovered, demanding to know what his role is in the community's dark experiments. Initially, Jack tries to dismiss her concerns, but when Alice reveals just how much she has uncovered, he realizes there is no more hiding. With a heavy heart, Jack finally confesses the truth. Jack explains that his work is deeply entwined with the experiments being conducted in the community. He was recruited by a shadowy organization that operates in secrecy, conducting psychological and paranormal research. The organization's goal is to push the boundaries of human consciousness and control, using the residents of the community as test subjects. Jack's role in the project involves developing and overseeing the technology used in the experiments, particularly those related to the manipulation of perception and reality. He reveals that the paranormal occurrences Alice has been experiencing are not the result of traditional hauntings, but are instead the byproduct of the experimental technology being tested in their home. The house itself has been outfitted with devices designed to alter her perceptions, inducing fear and confusion as part of a larger study on human behavior under extreme psychological stress. Jack admits that he was aware of the experiments from the beginning but claims that he was pressured into participating, believing it was the only way to ensure their safety in the community. Alice is devastated by the revelation. The man she thought she knew has been complicit in the very horrors that have been tormenting her. Jack tries to justify his actions, insisting that he was only following orders and that he never intended for Alice to be harmed. But his explanations ring hollow to Alice, who feels betrayed and manipulated by the one person she thought she could trust. As Jack continues to explain the extent of the organization's control over the community, Alice realizes that their entire life together has been a carefully constructed lie. The happy marriage, the perfect home, and the close-knit community were all part of an elaborate facade designed to keep them compliant and unaware of the dark forces at work. The revelation leaves Alice reeling, her world shattered by the truth. She now faces an impossible choice: stay in the community and continue to live under the organization's control, or risk everything to escape and expose the truth. The nature of Jack's work and the hidden truths about the community have pushed Alice to the brink, forcing her to confront the terrifying reality that nothing in her life is as it seems. With Alice pressing for answers and the veil of secrecy finally lifting, Jack reveals the full, horrifying truth about his job. He confesses that his role extends far beyond the experiments she had discovered. It is deeply rooted in a larger, far more sinister agenda. The organization he works for is a covert government contractor, operating under the guise of a research institute. Their true mission is to pioneer cutting-edge technologies in mind control, behavioral conditioning, and reality manipulation, with the ultimate goal of weaponizing these techniques for military and intelligence purposes. Jack explains that the facility he works at is the epicenter of this research. The technologies developed there are tested on unsuspecting residents of the community, including Alice. These experiments are not just about pushing the boundaries of science. They are about creating a society where free will can be overridden, and reality itself can be reshaped according to the whims of those in power. The paranormal experiences Alice has endured were deliberate attempts to test the limits of these technologies, to see how far they could push her without breaking her completely. Jack admits that he was initially drawn to the project out of intellectual curiosity and the promise of groundbreaking discoveries. However, as the experiments became more invasive and the ethical boundaries blurred, he found himself trapped in a web of secrecy and fear. He was warned that any attempt to leave or expose the organization would result in dire consequences not only for him but for Alice as well. Over time, Jack became complicit in the organization's plans, rationalizing his actions as necessary for their survival. Alice learns that Jack's duties involved more than just overseeing the technology. He also played a key role in monitoring the psychological and emotional responses of the residents, including his own wife. He was tasked with ensuring that the experiments remained controlled and that the subjects, his neighbors and friends, did not become aware of the true nature of their reality. Jack's job was not just to keep the technology running but to maintain the illusion of a normal, happy community while its inhabitants were subjected to unimaginable manipulation. The full weight of Jack's confession hits Alice like a tidal wave. The man she once trusted has been instrumental in the horrors she's experienced, and the life they've built together is nothing more than a carefully constructed lie. Jack's job, she realizes, was never just about providing for their family. It was about maintaining control, both over her and the entire community. The depth of his involvement in the organization's dark agenda leaves Alice feeling betrayed, terrified, and more isolated than ever before. As the conversation continues, Jack reveals the broader implications of the organization's work and the true purpose of the community they live in. The community, he explains, was never intended to be a simple residential area. It was specifically designed as a controlled environment for large-scale psychological and social experiments. Every aspect of life within the community, from the layout of the streets to the social interactions between residents, has been meticulously planned to serve the organization's goals. The residents of the community were carefully selected based on specific psychological profiles. Each individual or family was chosen because they exhibited traits or behaviors that made them ideal subjects for the organization's experiments. Unbeknownst to the residents, they have been living in a fishbowl, their every move monitored and analyzed by the organization's operatives, who pose as ordinary neighbors or community officials. The social gatherings, the neighborhood watch programs, even the seemingly random events, everything was orchestrated to manipulate and study the residents' responses under various conditions. Alice also learns that the community is just one of many similar projects spread across the country, all interconnected through a vast network of government agencies, private contractors, and shadowy organizations. These projects are part of a larger effort to develop and deploy advanced psychological warfare tactics and social control mechanisms. The ultimate goal is to perfect these techniques for use on a national and global scale, ensuring that populations can be controlled without the need for overt force. The community's true purpose, Jack reveals, is to serve as a prototype for a new kind of society, one where free will is an illusion, and the thoughts, emotions, and actions of individuals can be manipulated from behind the scenes. The connections between the community, the organization, and the broader government apparatus are deep and complex, implicating powerful figures and institutions in a conspiracy that extends far beyond anything Alice could have imagined. The revelation leaves Alice reeling. The place she once considered home is nothing more than a carefully designed prison, and the people she thought were her friends and neighbors are all pawns in a game they don't even know they're playing. The community's true purpose is a terrifying testament to the lengths to which those in power will go to maintain control, and the connections that bind it to the wider world mean that there is no easy escape. Alice realizes that she is now in possession of knowledge that could get her killed, or worse. The dark truth about the community and Jack's job has shattered her reality, leaving her with no choice but to confront the terrifying question of what she will do next. The stakes have never been higher, and Alice knows that her next move could determine not only her fate but the fate of everyone trapped in the web of lies that has ensnared them all. The revelations weigh heavily on Alice, who is no longer able to contain the flood of emotions surging within her. The truth about Jack's job and the dark purpose of their community has shattered the foundation of her life, and the man she once loved now feels like a stranger. With anger, fear, and betrayal boiling over, Alice decides it's time to confront Jack head-on. No longer willing to live in the shadow of his secrets, Alice waits for Jack to return home, her heart pounding with a mix of dread and determination. When he walks through the door, she doesn't give him a chance to speak. Instead, she demands to know how he could have deceived her for so long, how he could have been a part of something so monstrous. The confrontation is explosive, filled with accusations and raw emotions. Alice's voice trembles with rage as she recounts all the things she's discovered, her words cutting like knives. Jack, caught off guard by the intensity of her confrontation, tries to explain himself, but Alice isn't interested in excuses. She challenges him, asking how he could justify his role in the community's horrors, how he could prioritize his job over their marriage, and why he didn't warn her about the dangers they were living in. Jack's attempts to calm her down only fuel her anger, as Alice feels he's still trying to control the narrative, to downplay the severity of what he's done. Alice's confrontation becomes a reckoning, not just for Jack, but for herself. She demands answers to questions that have haunted her since she first noticed something was wrong. She wants to know if he ever truly loved her, or if their entire relationship was just another part of the experiment. The weight of her words hangs in the air, heavy with the pain of betrayal and the loss of trust. Jack, clearly distressed, tries to make her understand his side. He admits that he was initially drawn to the job out of ambition and the allure of being part of something groundbreaking. But as the experiments became more invasive and unethical, he found himself trapped, unable to leave without putting them both at risk. Jack insists that he kept the truth from her to protect her, believing that ignorance would keep her safe from the organization's reach. However, Alice isn't satisfied with his explanations. She accuses him of being complicit in the organization's crimes, of sacrificing their marriage and her sanity for the sake of his career. The confrontation becomes a crucible for their relationship, forcing both of them to confront the consequences of Jack's choices and the lies that have defined their lives for so long. The confrontation marks a turning point in Alice and Jack's relationship, one that neither of them can easily come back from. The trust that once formed the bedrock of their marriage is now shattered, replaced by a chasm of doubt and betrayal. The revelations have exposed deep fissures in their relationship, ones that have been widening for some time but are now impossible to ignore. Alice, struggling to process the enormity of what she's learned, finds herself questioning everything she thought she knew about Jack. The man she loved, the life they built together, now feels like a carefully crafted lie. She can't look at Jack without seeing the role he played in the experiments, the way he stood by while she was manipulated and tormented. The intimacy they once shared is gone, replaced by a cold distance that feels insurmountable. Jack, on the other hand, is racked with guilt. He knows that his decisions have irrevocably damaged their relationship, and he is painfully aware that he may never be able to earn Alice's forgiveness. Despite his attempts to justify his actions, he can see the hurt and betrayal in Alice's eyes, and it cuts him deeply. He tries to reach out to her, to offer comfort, but Alice recoils, unable to accept his touch. The impact of the revelations extends beyond just their emotional connection, it also disrupts the very structure of their life together. Alice no longer feels safe in their home, knowing that it was a key part of the organization's experiments. The house, once a sanctuary, now feels like a prison, filled with memories of deception and fear. She begins to distance herself from Jack, spending more time alone as she grapples with the enormity of what she's learned. Their conversations become strained and superficial, as both struggle to navigate the new reality they find themselves in. The easy rapport they once shared is gone, replaced by awkward silences and half-hearted attempts at normalcy. Jack continues to work at the facility, but his heart is no longer in it, weighed down by the knowledge of what his actions have cost him. He tries to make amends, but every gesture feels hollow to Alice, who is too consumed by her own pain to see any path to reconciliation. The revelations have left them both isolated, trapped in their own guilt and grief. The love that once defined their relationship has been tainted by lies and betrayal, and neither knows how to move forward. The consequences of Jack's secrets have created a rift between them that seems impossible to bridge, leaving their marriage hanging by a thread. In the aftermath of the confrontation, Alice and Jack are left to pick up the pieces of their shattered relationship. But the path to healing is unclear, and the scars left by the revelations may be too deep to ever fully heal. As they navigate the fallout of the dark truths that have come to light, both are forced to confront the possibility that their relationship may never recover, and that the life they once shared is gone forever. Overwhelmed by the devastating revelations and the fractured state of her relationship with Jack, Alice reaches a breaking point. The weight of the secrets and lies has become unbearable, and she realizes that she can no longer remain passive in the face of the organization's control over her life. Desperate for a way out, Alice begins to consider drastic measures to escape the nightmarish reality she finds herself trapped in. Her first attempts to escape involve trying to leave the community, but she quickly discovers that doing so is not as simple as it should be. The organization's surveillance extends beyond the confines of her home, and the community is surrounded by high-tech security measures designed to prevent anyone from leaving. Alice's every move is monitored, and she realizes that escaping without attracting attention or being intercepted is nearly impossible. Determined not to be trapped any longer, Alice decides to confront the situation head-on. She starts by gathering evidence of the organization's crimes, hoping that exposing the truth might be her way out. She breaks into the facility where Jack works, using her knowledge of the community's layout and security systems to bypass the guards and access critical documents and recordings. In the process, she discovers even more disturbing evidence about the extent of the experiments and the manipulation of the community's residents. Alice also attempts to reach out to others who might be sympathetic to her plight. She tries to contact journalists, whistleblowers, or anyone who might help her expose the organization's activities. However, her efforts are thwarted by the organization's extensive network of control, which monitors and intercepts communications to prevent any leaks or dissent. Every attempt to reach out for help is met with resistance or threats, leaving Alice feeling increasingly isolated and desperate. In her attempts to confront the situation, Alice also faces the harsh reality that the organization's influence extends deeply into every facet of her life. She finds herself constantly on edge, aware that any misstep could lead to her being captured or silenced. The stress and paranoia take a toll on her mental health, making it difficult for her to think clearly or make rational decisions. The climax of Alice's struggle comes when she decides to take a bold and dangerous step. She plans to publicly expose the organization's crimes, regardless of the personal risk involved. With the evidence she has gathered, Alice orchestrates a high-stakes confrontation, intending to reveal the truth to the outside world and force the organization to face accountability. The confrontation takes place during a community event, which she uses as a cover to make her move. Alice knows that the organization has planned the event as a way to maintain control and keep the residents pacified. She seizes the opportunity to broadcast her evidence to the community, hoping to awaken others to the truth and rally support against their oppressors. As the event progresses, Alice takes the stage and uses a hacked communications device to project the damning evidence onto large screens. The documents, recordings, and images she has gathered are displayed for everyone to see, laying bare the extent of the experiments, the manipulation, and the surveillance. The community's reactions range from shock to disbelief, as the truth is revealed in a dramatic and public fashion. In the chaos that ensues, Alice's actions spark a series of events that spiral out of control. The organization, threatened by the exposure, reacts swiftly and violently. Security personnel move in to contain the situation, and Alice finds herself in a desperate struggle to evade capture. She navigates through the chaos, trying to protect herself and those who have begun to question the organization's control. During the climax, Jack appears, torn between his guilt and his loyalty to the organization. He confronts Alice, pleading with her to stop and arguing that their escape might still be possible if she cooperates. Their confrontation is intense and emotional, as Jack tries to reconcile his feelings for Alice with his fear of the organization's retribution. Alice, fueled by a mix of rage and determination, refuses to back down. She makes a final, desperate attempt to escape the community, but the organization's security forces close in on her. In a harrowing dramatic sequence, Alice manages to outmaneuver her pursuers temporarily, but the outcome remains uncertain as she faces the possibility of capture or worse. The climax of Alice's struggle is a dramatic and emotionally charged moment, where the stakes are higher than ever. Her actions have set off a chain reaction that challenges the organization's control and forces the community to confront the harsh reality of their existence. As the confrontation reaches its peak, Alice's future remains uncertain, and the ultimate resolution of her struggle hangs in the balance. The fallout from Alice's dramatic revelation at the community event sends shockwaves through the isolated enclave. The public exposure of the organization's experiments triggers immediate and chaotic reactions from both the residents and the operatives tasked with maintaining control. In the immediate aftermath, the organization moves quickly to contain the damage. Security forces clamp down on the community, rounding up individuals who are suspected of having supported Alice's actions or who might have been involved in the exposure. The once tight-knit and seemingly tranquil community is thrown into disarray, with residents torn between their fear of the organization and their newfound awareness of the truth. the organization's efforts to suppress the fallout are met with varying degrees of success. While they manage to re-establish a semblance of order, the exposure has already sown seeds of doubt and dissent among the residents. Some people begin to resist the organization's authority, while others are paralyzed by fear, unsure of who to trust or how to react. The community becomes a place of paranoia and tension, as old friendships dissolve and new alliances form in response to the crisis. For Alice, the fallout is a mix of triumph and despair. Her brave attempt to expose the organization has succeeded in bringing the truth to light, but it has also made her a target. She is pursued relentlessly by the organization's agents, who are determined to silence her and prevent further leaks. Alice finds herself on the run, constantly evading capture while trying to stay one step ahead of her pursuers. The public exposure has also had unintended consequences. As news of the scandal reaches the outside world, there are attempts by external media and investigative bodies to cover the story. However, the organization's extensive reach and control over information make it difficult for the full extent of the truth to be widely disseminated. While some aspects of the scandal gain traction, the organization's power remains a formidable barrier to complete transparency. The confrontation and its aftermath have irrevocably altered Alice and Jack's lives. Their once stable and predictable existence has been shattered, and they are forced to navigate a new and dangerous reality. Alice's life is transformed by her courageous act of exposing the organization. She becomes a symbol of resistance and bravery for some, but also a fugitive for the organization. Her quest for freedom leads her to seek refuge with underground resistance groups and activists who are working to combat the organization's influence. These groups provide her with temporary safety and support, but also place her in a constant state of uncertainty and danger. Alice grapples with the emotional and psychological toll of the exposure. The betrayal, the loss of her former life, and the constant threat to her safety weigh heavily on her. She struggles to rebuild a sense of normalcy and stability in an environment where trust is scarce and the risk of capture is ever present. Her relationships with former friends and neighbors are strained, as many are either still under the organization's control or fearful of being associated with her. Despite the challenges, Alice is driven by a renewed sense of purpose. She becomes an advocate for the victims of the organization's experiments and works tirelessly to support efforts to dismantle its operations. Her actions inspire others to join the fight against the organization, and she becomes a central figure in a broader movement for justice and reform. Jack's life undergoes a dramatic reversal following the confrontation. His role in the organization's schemes is exposed, and he faces severe consequences both professionally and personally. The organization, now under intense scrutiny, distances itself from him to protect its own interests, leaving Jack isolated and vulnerable. The fallout from the exposure leads to Jack being terminated from his position at the facility. His attempts to salvage his career or find new employment are met with little success, as his association with the organization taints his reputation and limits his opportunities. Jack's professional downfall is compounded by the personal fallout, as he is forced to confront the full extent of his actions and the impact they have had on his marriage and his life. Jack's relationship with Alice deteriorates further as a result of the exposure. The betrayal and manipulation he engaged in are now public knowledge, and Alice's trust in him is irreparably damaged. Their attempts at reconciliation are hindered by the weight of his actions and the ongoing threat from the organization. Jack's guilt and remorse are palpable, but they do little to mend the rift between him and Alice. In the end, Jack is left to grapple with the consequences of his choices and the damage they have caused. His life becomes a cautionary tale of ambition and compromise, and he is forced to confront the reality of his involvement in the organization's dark agenda. The unraveling of Alice and Jack's lives serves as a powerful reminder of the cost of deception and the complexities of confronting the truth. Their journey through the aftermath of the confrontation highlights the enduring impact of their choices and the challenges of rebuilding lives that have been upended by betrayal and manipulation. In the wake of the chaos and upheaval caused by the exposure of the organization's secrets, Alice faces a critical decision about her future. With her life turned upside down and her safety still at risk, she must choose a path that allows her to rebuild and find a sense of purpose amidst the ruins of her past life. Alice decides to dedicate herself to a cause greater than her own personal safety or comfort. She becomes actively involved in the fight against the organization, collaborating with resistance groups and advocacy organizations working to expose the truth and bring justice to those affected by the experiments. Her first-hand knowledge of the organization's operations makes her a valuable asset in these efforts, and she uses her experiences to help others understand and confront the dangers posed by such covert operations. Through her work, Alice finds a renewed sense of purpose and empowerment. She channels her anger and pain into activism, becoming a vocal advocate for transparency, human rights, and reform. Her efforts contribute to raising public awareness and increasing pressure on authorities to address the organization's abuses. Alongside her activism, Alice begins to focus on her own healing and recovery. She engages in therapy and support groups to address the emotional trauma she has endured. The process of rebuilding her mental and emotional well-being is challenging, but she finds solace in connecting with others who have faced similar struggles. Through these interactions, she learns to cope with her past and starts to rebuild her sense of self. Alice also takes steps to redefine her personal identity and sense of normalcy. She moves to a new location, far from the community and the remnants of her old life. This fresh start allows her to create new routines and establish a sense of security. While the scars of her past remain, she embraces the opportunity to forge a new path and build a future that is no longer defined by the organization's control. Alice's decision to move forward also involves reconciling her relationships with others. She seeks to repair bonds with those who supported her during the crisis, rebuilding trust and forging new connections. Her interactions with former neighbors and friends are tentative at first, but over time, she works to re-establish a sense of community and support. The resolution of the paranormal disturbances is a significant aspect of Alice's journey towards new beginnings. With the exposure of the organization and its manipulative experiments, the supernatural occurrences that plagued her home begin to wane. The paranormal disturbances had been a direct result of the organization's experiments and their manipulative technologies. With the organization's operations exposed and its control over the community compromised, the forces that had been used to manipulate Alice and her environment begin to dissipate. The disruptions in her home that once felt threatening and inexplicable start to fade, as the source of the disturbances is neutralized. As Alice settles into her new life, she finds that the residual effects of the paranormal disturbances gradually subside. The strange occurrences that had once plagued her home become less frequent and eventually stop altogether. This restoration of normalcy provides Alice with a sense of relief and closure, allowing her to finally feel secure in her new environment. Alice's journey to resolve the paranormal disturbances also involves reflecting on her experiences and finding closure. She takes time to understand the connection between the disturbances and the organization's experiments, gaining insight into how the manipulation of reality had affected her perception and experiences. In her new environment, Alice creates a space that is free from the influences of her past. She decorates her new home with care, focusing on creating a peaceful and comforting atmosphere. The process of setting up her new space becomes a symbolic act of reclaiming her life and asserting control over her environment. With the paranormal disturbances resolved and her new life taking shape, Alice embraces her future with a sense of confidence and determination. She knows that the path ahead will have its challenges, but she is prepared to face them with the resilience and strength she has gained from her experiences. Alice's decision to move forward and her resolution of the paranormal disturbances mark the beginning of a new chapter in her life. As she continues to advocate for justice and rebuild her personal identity, she carries with her the lessons learned from her tumultuous journey, ready to face whatever comes next with courage and hope.